I don't understand one of Matt Walsh's recent videos. He talks about how men shouldn't express any emotion whatsoever, and it made me wonder if he understands that men shouldn't be robots emotionally, or if he is too robotic himself to understand that. I don't understand this man. I hope his children don't turn out like him, especially his sons. He has 2 daughters and 4 sons. Here is what he says about that men don't need to be emotional at all.
Tells us that he went to his friend's house and starts crying on his couch. His friend offers him a quick supportive word and then tries to get back to ordering the pizza. Meatball wants us to see his friend as the bad guy in this exchange, even though he's the one not only crying like a girl on his friend's couch, but even worse, doing it while his friend is in the middle of trying to order the pizza.
Like it's a bad thing. If it is for this guy's friends, they need to understand that not all men are like them.
So Meatball's committed multiple violations of the man code in this story.
That's stupid.
Violation number 1, crying in front of another man. Violation number 2, crying in front of another man at his house. Violation number 3, distracting a man while he's trying to order pizza.
What are you trying to say, that men should be robots or living statues that show no emotion whatsoever? Tell me, do you think that's the whole purpose of men in this world, to be living robots made of flesh, blood, and bones and impregnate women or something? I really want to know that.
Now, the friend, we can assume he's married, so he already has to deal with that sort of thing with his wife. Women are infamous for this kind of thing. They're infamous for not staying focused and on message while food is being ordered. Like the other day, I was trying to order Chinese. I asked my wife, like, what do you want from the Chinese place? She launches into like a 7-minute story that's completely irrelevant to the Chinese. I'm like, I'm sitting here. We can talk about that, but do you want General Tso's? What do you want? Do you want, what are we doing here? We got to get the food handled first, and then we can have a conversation.
Just because your wife did it to you doesn't mean every woman in this universe tends to do it. Try to separate what you're going through in your life from what's going on in the world. Matt, just because you experience it in your life doesn't mean it happens to every man in the world.
And now this guy, he has to deal with the same sort of thing when he invites dudes over for pizza? Like, it's unconscionable to put a man in that position.
Maybe for it is, but not for every man on the planet.
I'm sorry you had a loved one who faked cancer. That's weird, but like, what exactly does that have to do with Papa John's? I don't understand why you're bringing this up right now. And what does Meatball want from his friend here? The guy said he was sorry. Okay, check. He said it was crazy. Check. It is crazy. What else is there to say? Especially a story like that. Like, that's what I don't know what else to say. A loved one faked cancer. That's super weird, man. Sorry that happened. What kind of cancer did he fake? Like, what do you want, questions? But he acknowledged your sob story, he offered condolences, and then he tried to redirect back to the pizza instead of letting you indulge any further in your pity party. That's what men do. It's how men relate to each other. We don't wallow together in our emotions.
It's what you do with the friends you might have. Not every man on earth. Matt, what do you think? All the men in the world do what you do and the way you do. If so, you've probably been living in a bubble for too long, and someone needs to get you out of there before it drops you any more IQ points.
In fact, if I have any criticism of the friend in this exchange, it's that he didn't make fun of the other guy for crying. That's the only place where he dropped the ball. And I can only take solace in the assumption that the next time they hang out, if there is a next time, the friend will find an opportunity to make a joke about Meatball's crying fit.
What crime? Is a crying man considered a crime in your eyes? I think you're just trolling just to give a bad name to all the men in the world, especially those who show a little more emotion than you and men like you. I think people with the same opinions as yours should be fined just to make them understand how other men feel when they tend to express more emotions than you. I'm sure you would hate it if something like this happened. But think how the more emotional men would feel if something like what you described happened to them.
And then to make a joke about it every time he sees them from here until they die. And it doesn't have to be anything clever, by the way. I mean, just as soon as he sits on the couch, just say like, hey, you're not gonna start crying again, are you? Something simple like that, just to make sure that you fulfill your duty to give him crap for that, because that's what friends do, at least male friends.
What duty? Men's duty is being emotionally stunted beings who can't express any emotion whatsoever. Who wants friends like that? Maybe robots, but not human beings.
Meatball relates this experience as proof that men are emotionally deficient, but
I think you're emotionally deficient, Matt, or however you said it. At least the men you talk about have human emotions, unlike you.
It's not proof that men are emotionally deficient, it's proof that men are men. Men are not women. They are different, not deficient. They relate to each other differently. They express themselves differently.
Just because they are different from each other, it doesn't mean they are so different that they can't do anything the opposite sex can do. That includes expressing emotions. Emotions are one of the most basic things humans have. They need to go to the bathroom or eat. They need to express emotions. I'm not saying that everyone has to express the same emotions or at the same level, but that doesn't mean women are emotional lumps of meat and men are emotionally empty lumps of meat. You know what I'm saying? I hope so, because what you are saying is that to be a real man, you have to be a robot or a statue. If you think that is the only way in this world to be a real man, then 90% of men in the world cannot be real men because they bring in one way or another their feelings, whether it's in private or not.
They have a different way of being and acting in the world because men are men. We are not women.
Yeah, so, are you saying that men and women have to act the opposite of each other? Just because we are different, it does not mean that we are so different that we cannot be similar emotionally, even if not on the same level. Some men can express more emotion than other men, and some women can express less emotion than other women. There are such people of both sexes. You don't have to be a robot to be a man, and you don't have to be a walking emotion to be a woman.
Meatball sees that as a defect, and he's not alone. The only reason we're talking about this post by some random guy is that it typifies a prevailing attitude in our culture. This has been the popular consensus among elites in our society, the philosophy that drives most of our institutions for decades now. Men are broken, they say, because they are too much like men and not enough like women. And the way to fix men is to make them like women. A woman is a kind of perfected man by this way of thinking, which, by the way, explains why trans ideology is so important to these people, but that's a thread we can follow another day. But it's all nonsense, of course. It's extremely harmful nonsense.
It's because they make wrong choices, not because they supposedly act like women or whatever you claim.
There is nothing wrong with how men in general relate to each other and express their emotions. We are more stoic. We are the more emotionally reserved sex. That's what we've always been. It's how we're naturally inclined. It's how we're made.
But that doesn't mean it will kill you if you react a little differently. You can think you live in a jungle, and if you show even the smallest weakness in the world, you will be hunted by wild animals or something like that.
It's also how society needs us to be.
Who decided that? You.
Okay, society cannot properly function if everyone is dwelling on their emotions all the time. Okay, then no pizza would ever get ordered.
Who cares about this stupid pizza?
So some of us, about half of us, need to be able to shoulder our emotional burdens quietly. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't need support and friendship. It just means that support and friendship are different for us. Male friendships tend to be less intense. They tend to be more relaxed, less needy, less demanding. That's not the wrong way to approach friendships. It's just a different way than how women approach them.
What you just explained can happen to women too. You don't have to be a man for it to happen to you.
You know, I have friends that I've known for 30 years, and these days I see them once a year, maybe twice at most. There are years we go by where I don't see them at all. We never talk on the phone. We might text a few times over the year, usually during football season. I still consider them to be very good friends, and when I see them, it's just like old times. We also spend very little time catching up on each other's personal lives whenever we do see each other. And this is something that, my wife doesn't understand. She doesn't understand how I can still consider those guys friends when I so rarely see or speak to them.
She doesn't have to be a woman to not understand it. I'm sure many men don't understand it.
So if I say, friend, she'll say, oh yeah, when's the last time you talked to him? I don't know, 2021 maybe? So to her, that's like, it's impossible. Doesn't make any sense. She doesn't understand how, when I do see and speak to them, we don't end up gabbing the whole time about all the things that happened in our personal lives since we last saw each other. And that's because if my wife goes several weeks, let alone months, without having any contact with somebody she considers a friend, it's a problem. Okay, it's a sign that something has gone wrong. And when they finally do talk again, they'll need to have like a heart-to-heart about the fact that they weren't talking before. So the fact of them not talking has to be a thing that they talk about before they can talk about anything else. And they'll talk about that, and tears might be shed, and it'll be a whole thing.
It can also happen to men, and some women don't do it. I don't understand what you are trying to say here. Are you saying that all women do what your wife does and all men do what you do in these situations? Because if so, it's an ugly generalization, and you need to get out of the bubble you live in, because you don't live in reality and you act as if you know everything there is to know about everything and everyone.
And they're women. This is what women do.
Definitely not. What you just said is one big bullshit, and you should throw it in the toilet and flush it. That's a really disgusting generalization, like the shit you're throwing down the toilet. Matt, just because some women do it, doesn't mean all women do it. Maybe there aren't many men who do it, but that doesn't mean that the ones who do are women dressed as men or anything like that. That's what I meant when I said you live in a bubble. Your only examples of supposedly normal behavior for women are your wife, your daughters, and maybe your sisters, although I don't know how many of your siblings are women. Don't let how they act dictate how every woman does things just because they are women. Your generalization is so retarded. I don't understand how the people who pass with you, especially the women there, don't tell you anything about it during the broadcast of your episode. I pity them, your wife, and your daughters, mainly because you are a shocking example to them, especially to your daughters in terms of the opinions you give. I hope that when your daughters are old enough to understand the truth, they will know that the retarded things you said are not true, or at least not as true as you claim them to be. I hope the same for your sons. I hope they don't have those retarded views of yours, no matter what you say to them and about what.
And that's fine for women. It's healthy for women. But it's not healthy to insist on that kind of behavior in men.
It's you who decided that's the case, Matt. It's not as if it's like that in reality. All this nonsense comes from you and lunatics like you.
Here's how Meatball wraps up his thread. Quote, I mostly just pity men at the not sure how I feel about my divorce levels of emotional intelligence. They're not dumb, they're confused. They lack the tools to introspect. They were never taught. The emotions are just going to sit in the pressure cooker in their heart, maybe forever. Society tells men to suppress their feelings. Women demand go to therapy, but female modes of expression are alienating to men. All the other men in your life are just as confused because if talking about the NBA isn't helping, they're out of idea. No wonder guys feel nothing. Where can men go to learn how to feel things and support each other? Fraternal orders like the Masons or Elks, dead. Church religion, dead. Strong, vulnerable men don't exist in media. Clubs, third spaces, military, dead, dead, dead. Men unable to feel their feelings lived confused lives, inflicting others, especially women, with the burden of feeling things for them or compensating for their total lack of self-awareness. We need dedicated spaces for men to build emotional intelligence. Where are they? Now, he's right. Many of the spaces he mentioned are dead. Male spaces are largely dead precisely because they all became feminine. Now, he sees the feminization of male spaces as the solution, when in fact it's exactly the problem. Elk lodges, bowling clubs, cigar lounges. I mean, there are still cigar lounges, thank God. But for the most part, none of these traditionally male spaces were ever designed to help men build emotional intelligence or learn how to feel things, okay? Your grandpa, whoever, never went to the Elk Lodge because he wanted to learn how to feel things. These were designed as places where men could be how they are without any womanly lectures.
What lecture? Do you think that is the whole purpose of the places where feelings are expressed, whether they are good or bad feelings? When have you ever been to such places? Are there places that don't lecture you about whatever it is?
But now there's nowhere to go to escape the womanly lectures. Every space has been overtaken by scolding women and men who act like scolding women. Every space has to cater to women. That's the world we live in now.
Maybe every place you come across is in this situation, but that doesn't mean every man comes across such places and pretends to be a woman in a man's costume.
There is no place that's allowed to not cater to women. The let boys be boys philosophy is dead. It's deader than the lodges and the bowling clubs. Replaced with a very different mindset, which is now make boys be girls. And some men, like our friend Meatball, have taken that call very much to heart, and that is why they are all today canceled.
He didn't become a woman, Matt. Are you really that opaque? Are you unable to accept in any way that there are men who are a little more emotionally open than you? Is this concept too foreign to you to be familiar with? Is it so foreign to you that you'd rather pretend it doesn't exist at all? What is strange about you is that you believe in the existence of aliens. I'm not saying whether there are aliens in our world and where they live, but if you believe in their existence and not in the existence of men who can express emotions a little better than you, it pretty much proves that you are much more opaque than I thought, not only emotionally, but also mentally. I hope your kids don't come out as emotionally and mentally closed as you are when it comes to the subject of your video, because they will get a particularly wrong impression, and I'm not sure they can be convinced otherwise. It seems like you're raising them in the cocoon of things that can't be anything other than their original purpose. Of course, there are things I agree with you about, like men physically can't women and vice versa, but emotionally they can be a little more open like women, but not at the same level as them. Do not forget that we are all human, not a moving emotion and a hollow fleshy object of emotions. And that's why you, Matt Walsh, are cancelled for good from the world we live in, especially your opinions. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did like it, share it all over the internet, click the like button, subscribe to my channel and my podcast on Spotify, and help me introduce this channel and my podcast version of this channel to as many people as possible. Goodbye.